Tulsa now since 1997. Moved here from Columbus, Ohio. So I'm an Ohio native. Grew up in a very small, rural Appalachian part of Ohio. And my
What's the name? Do you mind me asking?
Yeah, the name is called Bidwell, Ohio.
Okay.
A southern town right on the edge of the Ohio River. And I had the opportunity to attend Central State University in Wilberforce, Ohio. It's one of two historically black colleges in Ohio. And there I met my freshman year, first week, a young man from Tulsa, Oklahoma. To this day, my best friend, his name is Michael McQuarters. And we, to this day, like I said, we're best friends. But that was my introduction to anything about Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
I like to often let everyone know that it was my sophomore year. That would be 91 when we spent a semester learning about at that time, the Tulsa Race Riot, learning about Greenwood, learning about historic black towns, Boley, Oklahoma, watched documentaries, watched film. So I had no previous awareness or knowledge of Oklahoma. And that was really my first introduction to it. So when I moved here in 97, it was literally quite shocking to know that as an Ohioan, I knew more about the history of this area than most of the citizens, white and black, that grew up right here in Oklahoma. It was a stark reality check. And why do I know more about this than most people living here? Fast forward to various jobs and working in the corporate world, and I've always been active civically and served on a number of nonprofit boards. The most recent would have been the Greenwood Cultural Center board, and had the opportunity to serve as their board of directors. During that time, when the Centennial Commission was formed by the founder and chair, Senator Kevin Matthews, there were collaborative working agreements taking place between the Greenwood Cultural Center Board, between the John Hope Franklin Center Board, with other historic Greenwood institutions and organizations, and the Centennial Commission, so that we could collaborate together on what we could do and recommendations that we could put forward on how this city and this community could get prepared for the Centennial in 2021. And so I had a lot of opportunity to build relationships, to see the behind the scenes of all that you do to create trust and rapport on this difficult and sometimes emotional subject. And my predecessor left to take a full-time position elsewhere, and the commission looked at reallocating resources for this position, make it a full-time position, and make it a project director versus a manager. And at that time, things were just really moving forward in such a significant pace. They needed someone here full-time to manage this. And I was asked, you should consider doing this. And I was working a corporate job downtown Tulsa. I was enjoying volunteering my time and had not thought about applying. And due to different phone calls I received, you need to apply for this, you'd be perfect. And so I didn't really see it as something I was going after until others said, you ought to really jump at this. And so I think they had 23 applicants applied. I was one of 23. Unfortunately, they whittled it down to me and a couple other people. And it was offered to me. I accepted, and it's been a blessing. It's been challenging, but it has been life-changing. And I'm thankful that, that old saying, you never know who's watching you. I'm glad there were people that were kind of watching me and saying, hey, this guy, I think he'd be perfect for this. But so sometimes others can see what you should be doing before you see it. And so that's, kind of like how I got to do this. But yeah, 23 years I think now I can call myself a Tulsan. I think the citizens have embraced me now, but been here long enough to say, I love the work that I do, and I'm absolutely in love with the history, all the good, the bad, and the ugly of the history here. But totally am a Tulsan, ground in here in Oklahoma. For me, especially the fact that, born, I'm a 70s, 1971 child. So to look at the fact that, 100 years ago, it's not that long ago when you really think about it. 1921 it's not that long ago. And so to try to put in perspective for people, how one community literally nearly annihilated, that's the best way to describe it, nearly annihilated another community based on racial animosity, fear, and the thought of keeping a group of people where they think they should be. And that mindset of racial division and animosity, what it means even now in 2020, when we, for me, when we look at the divisiveness of our country, some people are looking and saying, man, we've been here before. Of course, we're not directly referencing people being, communities of color being killed in a mass way. What we're referencing is the atmosphere that is created when one group of people thinks of another group of people in a totally different way, and how galvanizing it only takes a few voices to get an entire community to look at one community in a monolithic way, and the danger from that. So individuals like me that deal with this history every day, it's a stark reality that, oh my goodness, we're coming on 100 years, and it seems to be some of the atmosphere is repeating itself. So the perspective that people have on my side versus those that are watching this work, it could be easy to look at, construction and look at buildings going up and look at the amount of donations that are coming in and support, and think that everything has just been, easy street getting here. But the reality is it's taken, almost 5 years to get to this point. You have the Black community here, that there are still some that are still reaping from the reality that their family wealth was cut off. Imagine someone who is a direct descendant of J.B. Stratford, a direct descendant of A.J. Smitherman, a direct descendant of someone who owned a business and was prospering and doing well. And you now look back and see that all of that was destroyed and stopped. For some who experienced and were survivors, to never ever have a moment in time where those that were complicit no one has ever been brought to justice. Those are deep wounds. Then you have white citizens, the years of those that said, it's a shame that this happened in our community. It's terrible that happened. Let's just never talk about it anymore. Let's just move on. It'd be best if we just move on. And you have today people that love what we're doing, and this is history. We've got to face this together so we can move together forward. And then there are those that still say, why are you digging up the past? Why are you, dredging people through these emotions? How are we supposed to get past all that when all you do is keep reminding about how just get past it? And so you have, the two sides of the coin. Those that see how beneficial this is to learn this history, embrace and learn from it, and use this as a way to heal. And then you have those who would just I'd rather just not stir up those things and just away. So behind the scenes, it's interesting. 1 week we have phenomenal emails and those that'll call and how can I get involved and how can I be a part? And then you still have the emails and letters of those who let you know they don't like what you're doing. And it's 2020, and it all that does really for me. People have, how do you handle that? And honestly, it really gives me inspiration. It lets me know I got to keep doing this. You send me that, it gives me actually more fire to say, this is, when I get this letter, you're proving to me that I got to keep doing this. Yeah. Relationships, building relationships is the only way that we can get to this point. And putting this in proper context, are we, I think it was Dr. Martin Luther King that kind of coined this phrase or made this phrase proper. I'm not where I want to be. I'm not where I should be. But thank God I'm not where I used to be. I think we can not think, I know that we as a society and even as Greenwood and Tulsa as a whole, race relations have improved significantly. There are things that African Americans in this country and people of color in this city are doing and making inroads and doors that are being opened in a tremendous way. But at the same time, there are also still many things that we still can see need to be done, that still need to be worked on, that still need to be massaged, navigated, discussed among these different groups. And that comes by relationship building. The best model that I use or that I talk about is the relationship between State Senator Kevin Matthews, who's the founder and chair, reaching across the aisle and getting a receptive embrace from U.S. Senator James Lankford. And I say this all the time with intentionality, how powerful it is to have a Black Democrat and a white Republican from Oklahoma say, you know what, let's put our ideological differences aside and let's embrace this tough, tragic history together. Let's face it. But more so, let's use our voices and our platform and our friendship to bring others to the table so that we can heal from this and move forward. It has been the model, really, for all that we do, that in order to get people to sit at the table, you've got to have that openness. We've got to have some tough discussions. We've got to have some things where, you might say something that, might strike me in the wrong way, but I don't immediately demonize you over it. I realize, okay, let me tell you and enlighten you why that statement is not a good statement to make. And come from a place of, you're not saying something out of trying to hurt me. You're really, in many ways, saying it out of ignorance. And it goes both ways. White community towards the Black community, Black community towards the white community. Sitting down and having conversations, having tough conversations takes a lot of courage, but it takes a lot of openness that I'm willing to build some trust with you so that we can start here, however fragmented, however tough it is, but we don't just leave it here. Okay, now let's move forward from here. And, it's a complicated way of describing it, but literally that is how the commission has been really, if I can use the word successful, is creating this atmosphere where white and Black, Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative, religious, non-religious can feel their voices being heard. And I'm putting some personal, stake into this. I'm having to let go of some things that maybe I held on to so that I can move forward with you. That's the relationship side of it. One of the many things that Senator Matthews does so well is being able to build a relationship with someone on the other side. And when I'm just not talking about politically, but here you have an African-American man in Tulsa, lifelong North Tulsan, that, he was a former fireman, so he's got this training in his blood of going into the fire, I am, that embrace, while everyone else is standing back and shielding themselves, I'm the guy that's going to put on the heavy coat and put on the helmet. I'm going into it. And he's shown that he's willing to have the difficult conversations and gain alliances. And in this community, in this part of Oklahoma, and not just this part, but all of Oklahoma, there is a long history of you know, at one time, Oklahoma had over 50 historic all black towns, vibrant, self-reliant, self-sufficient, their own banks, their own businesses, everything going well. And the part of the history that we discover is, that's the 1860s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 40, 50 years of Black entrepreneurial achievement. And then, and I try to use this in a way when I'm talking to people, can you imagine how much of a slap in the face it was for these Black citizens to 1907, Oklahoma becomes a state. And the first law, the first legislative act of Oklahoma is to write laws for Jim Crow. All of a sudden, we're now a state, and legally, you can't be certain places, you can't do certain things, all because you're Black. It's so like, wow, 60 plus years of Black citizens living well, and then all of a sudden laws are set up in this same place that you have created your empire, your economic vitality, and now you can't do certain things. And that starts us, and I use that because that starts us down this road of animosity, racial Black and white animosity in Oklahoma that continued on and continued, and to some aspect continues on even today. It's like a consequence or a side effect of Jim Crow and segregation is that it caused these towns and these places and these locales to actually prosper. It's because of Jim Crow that a Greenwood just blossomed, because it was the only place that these citizens could freely, conduct commerce amongst themselves. And it wasn't just in Greenwood, but there were several Black communities, and they were so self-reliant because they had this insular economy that maintained itself because of segregation and Jim Crow. So it's interesting, how what you intended, we're going to keep you where you belong, ended up being, that's what made them so prosperous. First of all is to enlighten and educate. That's pretty much the overriding theme of what the Centennial Commission and what this history is, bringing people together to enlighten everyone, to educate. Our theme, our quote that we use, and that would actually be featured on Greenwood Rising, the History Center we're building, is a quote by James Baldwin that says, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." We basically bring people here so that you can face, hey, this happened. This was a part of history, but not just focus on the massacre, but to give the full perspective, the things that you didn't hear about in your history books, about these historic Black towns, about Greenwood, about how these people prospered, but more so than that, how this community rebuilt itself, the spirit of resilience, that they built it back bigger and better than it was prior to its destruction. Those themes, those things that people that are fascinated, when they hear this history and they read it, they're fascinated by it. So 2021 is to really propel and push forward this narrative that no one knows, in addition to the massacre, and use that as a platform, use that as a starting point of not just coming together in 2021 and singing Kumbaya and holding hands and, okay, we've done this commemoration, let's go back to our corners. But 2021 really is kind of a starting point or a jumping off point for changes to go forward in the next 3, 5, 10, 15, 20 years for race relations, harmony and everything in this country. We're careful not to use the word celebration, and we really are commemorating, so that we don't downplay or inadvertently give the impression that we're downplaying the tragedy and the horrific nature of what took place. Commemorating it, in other words, let's remember this. Let's never forget what happened here. Let's make sure that generations beyond now and beyond know this history, that we no longer have white and black individuals in Oklahoma get in their 20s and 30s and then get to college and finally hear this history for the first time. Let's make it a part of everyday Oklahoma history instruction that will lead to a greater awareness and a greater understanding of what happens, as we were talking earlier, when people don't know their history, when there's, deep-seated resentment by some who say, no one ever talks about this. No one ever addressed this. We're changing that. We're ensuring that never happens in the next generation. And the importance of commemorating that together for the world to see, that right here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, ironically, where one of the most horrific racial incidents ever occurred, can then become at the same time a place where people can come and find healing from racial trauma, and use that as springboard of, if we can survive this, then we as a people can come together and move forward together, so that we don't ever repeat this type of atmosphere that creates what took place here in 1921. Through that commemoration, there will be a celebratory mindset, because of we can celebrate this enclave of African American exceptionalism, to be an inspiration to young people today, to show them, hey, black doctors, black lawyers, black businessmen, black bankers, people who did well, exceptionally well. That if there's anything to celebrate, it'll be to celebrate the full history of what Greenwood and what Oklahoma represented back then for people of color. Probably for me, and it might sound very naive, and I guess maybe that's the best way to put it. My naivete was that, man, how can people not want to? This will be so, because of what we are discussing and because of the history and how rich it is, this ought to be one of the most significant things that everybody wants to be a part of. I was very naive in the fact that how many people would be resistant to what we're doing, how many different factions there are, in various parts of our community that have a level of distrust, that have they're a critiquing eye. There's nothing wrong with a critiquing eye, but constantly having to prove yourself to people that we are doing the right thing, and keeping in mind, the Black community, not just here, but in other places where, from a even politician's standpoint, promises made, promises broken, promises made, promises broken, over and over again. Being seen as, okay, here's another group that wants to come in and save the Black community. What's they really trying to do? Having to spend so much time to convince people that this is it. We're really going to do it this time. We're really going to raise the money. It's really going to happen. I learned it takes a long time to build the consensus of trust in a community like Tulsa, so that people really get to see, okay, I see what you're doing. And people sit back for a while and, well, let's see how you handle this, And as more and more people join and more people support and more people rally behind, you kind of see where, okay, you guys are proving yourselves. You guys are really showing what you're doing is having a significant impact on this city and on the lives of Blacks and whites and people of color. This can have tremendous impact beyond Tulsa. This can be a model for the state, for the nation. But it takes a long time to get there. It really does. Almost like, what does success look like? And I would say success looks like 15, 20 years from now, seeing a plethora of Black businesses, Black-owned businesses in Greenwood, Black-owned property and homes, seeing individuals just like in Greenwood white citizens that would come here to Greenwood and be patients of Dr. A.C. Jackson, white citizens that would come to the shows at the Dreamland Theater, that this is not just a quote unquote Black economy, but that people see the excellence they hear. For example, you have areas of the country where you'll say, I'm going to Chinatown, and it's not exclusive for that group of people, but everything there, is to experience Chinese culture or Asian culture. Having Greenwood be that place where people come and experience Black culture, Black excellence, and enjoy it and see it and understand that history, to see young boys and girls grow up in this community and go on and become even more prosperous in terms of having that inspiration to go get an education, to be, and not necessarily always go to college, but whatever you choose to do, that you can be great at it, that you can, skilled trade, skilled labor, and have an entrepreneurial mindset. I see that, the next 10, 15, 20 years, people looking at Greenwood, people looking at Tulsa and say, man, did you see what they did in Tulsa? Did you see how much of a humongous turnaround that they had there? And seeing that being repeated in other communities around the United States, that's when this has become successful. Greenwood Rising, an 11,000 square foot history center. Greenwood Rising, the Black Wall Street History Center, a world-class museum grade facility that will have a narrative museum experience to tell the story of Greenwood from prior to statehood and all the history, the period of Greenwood and its building up, the time period of 1921 and what happened to the massacre, and even tell the story of this, what we refer to in the museum as this arc of oppression, or this system of anti-Blackness that was taking place in the United States at that time, and what led to that, to make sure people understand that the incident of May 31st, 1921 was not just an isolated incident. There were things that were taking place in our country and even in Oklahoma that was leading up to this animosity that exploded through, the elevator incident, as it's called or referred to. But then tell the story of the rebuilding of Greenwood, and talk about its second decline, what led to its fall again, and the systems that were in place that caused that to happen. And then ultimately leading to a journey to reconciliation, a programmatic space that allows for people to come together, to have discussions, to experience, and to have opportunities to have healing and discussion and go away committed to their own personal lives and racial reconciliation. So Greenwood Rising is going to be all of that. And it sounds like a Herculean thing to do, but people coming here will experience all of that inside of Greenwood Rising. And so when they leave here, they will want to walk the district. They will want to go to Vernon AME Church and see the history there. They'll want to go to Greenwood Cultural Center, see the Survivors Gallery and the history there. They'll want to walk across and see the John Hope Franklin Park and walk that park in that area. They'll want to walk the Pathway to Hope. They'll want to visit the district and take time to see the history. That will inspire. That's what we leave Greenwood Rising will inspire. The Pathway to Hope is a collaboration with the Oklahoma Department of Transportation and the Centennial Commission and other partners and significant donors to create this walking path from Greenwood Avenue to Elgin. It's seen as a symbol of rejoining the district that was destroyed by the building of the I-244 program, the 60s and 70s urban renewal that many African Americans refer to as the urban removal of the 60s and 70s, for how many of those highway programs went through communities of color, and how it destroyed those communities. Greenwood was one of those. It was probably the death knell, really, to all the Black businesses and homes that were removed by eminent domain. So this walking path, it'll be beautiful with landscaping, with places to reflect, sit on benches and sit under trees, and you'll be able to look at art. You'll be able to look at images of some of the pioneers of Greenwood. And you take that path and walk to the John Hope Franklin Park, this Pathway to Hope. So it's one of our projects that hopefully will be not breaking ground, but having a ribbon cutting ceremony prior to Greenwood Rising opening. A couple of things. So, we do a lot of going into schools, in elementary and middle schools, and also high schools, and even to some extent colleges. And we talk about the history. We talk about the work of the Centennial Commission. We talk about what Greenwood Rising will do. They get a lot of inspiration, and we get a lot of emails. I get a lot of letters and notes from students. I can't wait till Greenwood Rising is here. But secondly, Greenwood Rising will have a very robust educational aspect in partnerships with Tulsa Public Schools and schools really all around the state to bring them here, having support for field trip programs. Much of the exhibits that will take you through Greenwood Rising will have a very educational component, educational feel to it. And so that will be one of the things that we are really looking forward to is being able to bring young people of all ages here to learn this history in an age-appropriate manner. And then third is our educational committee and educational initiative and focus. This will be the third year that we've had or hosted the Summer Teachers Institute. That was expected to continue on year after year, where public educators, and what we found out this year, not only public educators inside of Oklahoma, but even outside of Oklahoma, can learn this history, learn how to teach this history, get the curriculum so that they can become certified and go back to their respective schools and areas of influence and actually train other teachers to teach this information so we can have a curriculum that synchronizes, if you will, the ability for everyone to teach this in the right way and the same way and cover the same aspect of history. So, and that's just, I'm really not even giving a full perspective of all that we'll do and that we'll continue to do. But education is front and foremost for young people. You will find, or they will find, that we've had them in the forefront of the planning for everything in terms of Greenwood Rising. I would want people to know, number one, that they are welcome. Welcome to Tulsa. Welcome to getting an aspect of history and culture that you probably or may not have been introduced to before. I think we were awakened to how many people want to be here this past summer when we had the presidential rally was here, and at the same time that Juneteenth was being celebrated. Many people were awakened to this second holiday, if you will, that many Black communities celebrate. And yes, we all know July 4th, independence, but Black communities all over the country and even all over the world also celebrate this Juneteenth, June 19th, 1865, when the last segment of slaves were informed that they were free in Galveston, Texas, and communities that call it Juneteenth. What we saw from that is the thousands, literally thousands of people that said, I want to be in Tulsa. I want to be there. I want to be a part of this celebration. This year, and I've been here, like I said, 23 years, I have never seen that many. It's amazing to see white citizens and Black citizens mingling, enjoying, fellowshipping, having fun, learning about culture here in a way that I had not seen in the 23 years that I've lived here. That was kind of like a foretaste, if you will, like, wow, if we're doing this for Juneteenth, imagine what this will be like next year when Greenwood Rising is here, this history is here. We build up to that event in such a magnificent way. It let us know, it was like, man, this is the way it should be. This is what people should be looking forward to, is being able to come down here and enjoy learning about this history, but more so taking something from it that, I want to help. I want to be a part of this moving forward, this reconciliation type thing. Humbling is not an adequate word to describe how I feel every day when I come in here. It's long hours. It's usually by 7 a.m., I'm already sitting at the desk, and it is full long days of, trying to remind myself to go eat lunch and take a break and leaving at 6, 7, 8, sometimes 9 o'clock at night. And not getting there's someone said something to me once. I said, man, I hope you don't get burned out. And I had someone say about their job, and they said, I don't get burned out. I might get tired, but I don't get burned out. This is not a job where you get burned out. I might get tired at times, but what I'm working with and what I'm dealing with in the history, and then the people that I have the opportunity to work with, from the individuals on the steering committee that make everything happen, that I'm able to interact with, learn from, and jokingly, so the Centennial Commission sunsets, and I think 2023, unless anything changes in 2023, the commission will sunset. And so I do say this to people, come 2023, I'm out of a job, And I the other day I was sitting there thinking, you know what? I'm probably the first person in history to know I have done a good job when I lose my job. So, you got to keep a lighthearted attitude about it, and know that, this will, just because it's my end, when this is done, it will have given birth to something that will last for years and years and years to come. So that's probably the benefit that I have, is I know the work that we're doing now, generations to come will learn about this history and be changed as a result of it. So the long hours, when you put it in perspective, it doesn't mean, it doesn't dissuade me at all. It just, I've got a purpose. We have a purpose, and there are many people that will benefit from this long after I'm gone.